on to some basketball. Game 4 between the Clippers and the Mavericks is going to be taking place tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I think the biggest story for me, or the most interesting story rather, of the NBA playoffs so far has been this Clippers versus Mavericks series. And I'm sure if somebody held a gun to your head and said, hey, choose the more interesting NBA playoff or round 1 series, I'm sure you get a lot of Atlanta versus New York, Utah versus Memphis, Portland versus Denver. You'd probably hear those pop up more often than you would the Clippers versus the Mavericks, but I think everybody is so interested in this Clippers versus Mavericks series in kind of the speculation of what is going to happen to the Clippers if they do end up losing this series after forfeiting a 3-1 lead to Denver last year. If the Clippers end up losing this series, I think every basketball fan around the world, apart from the LA Clippers fans, are kind of just looking at their chops and looking, grabbing their popcorn and their soda drinks and saying, oh, this is going to be a show. I think that's why everybody is so fascinated with this series. That's certainly a factor as to why I'm fascinated in this series, but I was interested in the series coming into it purely because of what was going on the Clippers side of things. They dodged the Lakers in the first round by losing their last 2 games, and I don't want to hear any load management BS, even though that's probably part of it, and that's like a half truth. You definitely don't think that the Clippers wanted to meet the Lakers in round 1. I feel like the Clippers needed to have a step-up series, and when the Mavericks just blew past them in the first 2 games, it blew the Clippers back to their back against the wall, and now it's a situation in which it's a 2-1 series. If the Clippers are able to win Game 4, you got a real series, and I think that the Mavericks are seriously in trouble. But I was thinking about, how the first 3 games went, and I thought, maybe it was always supposed to be this way. You're thinking about what's wrong with the Clippers. Why are they performing so poorly? Well, first of all, the Mavericks just absolutely shot the lights out from under the Clippers in games 1 and 2. The Mavericks were one of the bottom half teams in the league when it came to 3-point shooting percentage during the regular season, and they were shooting 53% from 3-point range. I wasn't exactly sure about which spot they were exactly, but they were definitely not as accurate from 3-point range during the season, and they came out and absolutely smoked the Clippers. So you would imagine that the Mavericks had to cool off at some point. But for me, it's always been an above-the-shoulders issue for the Clippers. I don't think that they're well coached. I think Ty Lue is kind of a bum. Actually, if you want to talk about a defining moment in Game 3, the defining moment in Game 3 for me was when Ty Lue was just sitting on the score table, arms crossed. Marcus Morris just fouled out, and Ty Lue looked like he was envisioning what he was going to have for breakfast next morning. He was completely zoned out, and 2 of his assistants had to yell at him, and I think somebody actually came up and kind of shook him on the shoulder to try and not only understand who he wants to replace in the game to replace Marcus Morris, but how many timeouts he has, what's the situation in the game. Ty Lue just looked completely out of it. LeBron James definitely made Ty Lue look a lot better than he actually is. So I don't think they're well coached. I think I would definitely take Doc Rivers with this team as opposed to Ty Lue. But that's neither here nor there. That's in the past. That's a what-if situation. Who's to say that a Doc Rivers coach Clippers team wouldn't be behind 2-1 to a Mavericks team in the same situation here? I just think Doc Rivers is a better coach. But regardless of that, I was thinking about how the first 3 games went, and I said, maybe this is exactly what the Clippers needed, and this was the only way that they were going to find success. And I know that sounds a little bit weird, because you say, going down 2-0 is a good way to have success. I mean, obviously it's not, but with the Clippers having an above-the-shoulders issue, it's a confidence issue. Pandemic P has confidence issues, and, Kawhi Leonard hasn't always been the leader that he's needed to be at sometimes, and the rest of the roster, it's always kind of felt to me like they had some confidence issues at times, and, in other times they felt like they didn't. Game 3 was a time when they didn't. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard played nearly perfect games. But in a situation in which you're coming into the playoffs after losing a series against the Nuggets last year with a 3-1 lead, you can imagine why, if they're resting players to lose the last 2 games to avoid the Lakers, then the Clippers probably needed a step-up series with the Mavericks, and they needed a team like the Mavericks, in which the Clippers theoretically are talented enough to afford to go down 2-0, to where they can get that reality check. They can get their backs pushed against the wall and say, okay, it's time to stop messing around. It's time to play some actual good basketball. And then they kind of get themselves together. Because again, I don't feel like the coaching is very good. I feel like any success that the Clippers have, it's going to be due to the success of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and the defense that the Clippers have there. I feel like the players needed to be shooken up, pushed back against the wall, and said, okay, now it's time for us to carry this team out of the series. The coaching staff isn't going to do that for us. And I think that's what we might see. Look, if the Mavericks win Game 4, the series is over, and this take is completely hogwash, and, well, I guess everything that I'm saying about the Clippers is wrong. But when analyzing and thinking about why the series has gone the way that it has so far, apart from the Mavericks just shooting the lights out and shooting an ungodly efficient percentage, I really feel like it was an above-the-shoulders issues for the Clippers. I feel like they needed to go down 0-2 to be able to find success, because imagine if they did play the Lakers in the first round. You go down 2-0 to the Lakers, you're not winning that series. But if you go down 2-0 to the Mavericks, you have time to kind of collect yourself, come back, and play a better series and get yourself kind of warmed up for a better matchup down the road. And is it possible that the Mavericks close out the series? Absolutely. Kristaps Porzingis needs to play much better. He looked completely absent-minded in Game 3. Luka Doncic dropped 44, and that still wasn't enough for the Mavericks to win. Mavericks need some more help from the surrounding cast like they did in Game 1 and 2 to be able to win Game 4. If they do win Game 4, like I said, it's over and the stake is completely hogwash. But again, as I said, when thinking about the first 3 games of the series and why things have gone the way that they did and everything that happened with the Clippers side of things coming into the playoffs and how they played, it's a coaching issue. It's, hey, I think they needed some time to warm themselves up and give themselves a bit of a confidence boost. And I know what you're saying. How does going down 0-2 give yourself a confidence boost? When you go down 0-2 and you have your back against the wall and you need a win and you get a win, that is where the confidence boost comes from. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Clippers can turn it around. Obviously, if they do end up coming back and winning the series against the Mavericks, I think the Clippers are going to be in a much better position confidence-wise than if they just kind of steamroll through the Mavericks and just kind of downplay their victory against the Mavericks, saying, oh, well, that's the Mavericks, and now we have to play a real team. And imagine, them going down 0-2 in the next series. I guess all that I'm trying to say is that maybe going down 0-2 was necessary for the Clippers to have any success during the postseason. And I know somebody somewhere out there is saying, like, Nick, you're an idiot for thinking that going down 0-2 is good for any team. But hey, sometimes you need to be punched in the face a little bit before you can actually get that adrenaline in you to fight back. And maybe that's exactly what the Clippers needed moving forward. Hey folks, thank you so much for listening to this segment from the Hard-Headed Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed this segment, make sure that you drop a like on the video and a comment. It helps me out a bunch. And if you're interested in watching more segments like this from the show after the show has been completed, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should listen to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Once again, thank you so much for watching the video. My name is Nick Ryan, and I will see you all again very soon.